What's up YouTube, Max Clausen here. Today gonna be bringing you an update to my Blue Eyes White Dragon profile post Maximum Crisis. Yes, I know this is another update to the Blue Eyes White Dragon, but a little bit of information there. People usually make deck profiles usually around the deck that they enjoy playing the most or is one of their favorite archetypes of the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And for me, that is Blue Eyes White Dragon. So, always to the best of my abilities, I will be fiddling with this deck, trying to make it keep up with the current meta. And since the release of Maximum Crisis, I feel this build will be a very decent way of going about things. But that's all up to my personal preferences. If you all don't like some of the choices I have, you're free to leave some of your suggestions in the comment sections below. I always read your comments and give feedback and see if I can incorporate them into my type of playstyle. But at this moment, this is the type of deck I've been running with now for quite a while. So I'm going to show you the main, extra, and side as usual. So let's jump right into it. And first off, you're going to be running 3 Blue Eyes White Dragon. The deck revolves all around him, so you have to play him at a powerful 3. And then you'll play his alternative form, Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon. You can special summon this by revealing 1 Blue Eyes monster in your hand. And you can only summon it once per turn that way. And once per turn, you can destroy 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. But then this card cannot attack for the rest of that turn. That effect is activated. So, should you activate that effect, then you can tribute, if you tribute or sync or anything else with this monster, and bring it back with something like Return of the Dragon Lords. You can then use that effect again because it's a different card, or you can just attack because it's considered a different monster summoned. Next, you run the 2 Dragon Spirit of White to round off your level 8 dragons. Dragon Spirit of White is always treated as a Blue Eyes card. When it's normal or special, you can target 1 spell or trap on the field and then banish it. And while your opponent controls a monster, you can tribute this card and then special summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon from your hand. It's a pretty powerful monster, always going into the offense for Blue Eyes. So for the Blue Eyes Dragons, now for the small little entourage they have, you run 3 Sage with Eyes of Blue, 3 Stone of Ancients, 2 Effect Veilers, 1 Stone of Legend, and the 1 Master with Eyes of Blue. Sage with Eyes of Blue is considered one of the best tuners in the game, in my opinion, because it can literally be able to search off any level 1 light tuner the turn it's normal summoned. So be any of these guys, and if it's in your hand, you can send it and an effect monster on your field to the graveyard and special summon 1 Blue Eyes monster from your deck to the field. So a good little combo I do is, like, if my hand is pretty bad, I summon this effect, send this to the grave, then I get a Blue Eyes at the end phase, or summon him, get the add, then if I have another him in the hand, just send them both to the grave, summon a Blue Eyes. So you can already see where the combos and lie inside of him. Next, bring up to White Stone of Ancients. When during the end phase, this card was sent to the graveyard. You can special summon 1 Blue Eyes monster from your deck to the field. And during your turn, you can banish this card from the graveyard to add a Blue Eyes monster back from the grave to the hand. But you can only use each one. You can only use the graveyard effect once per turn, but its graveyard effect can stack. So say 2 of these got into the graveyard, you can activate both of their effects to get 2 Blue Eyes monsters. So that's always good to know. Then you got the 2 Effect Veilers for obvious Hammond traps. The White Stone of Legend can be used for discard fodder and to get a Blue Eyes straight from your deck to the hand, so it's even more deck thinning. And a little thing to note is, even if you can't add a Blue Eyes from your deck to your hand, like you don't have any more targets, you still shuffle the deck because that's kind of part of the effect. It's almost like in the show, when the deck instantly adds a card to their hand because it can meet the requirements, but should you not be able to, the deck still has to shuffle itself. And then you run the one master with Eyes of Blue. People are always saying, and some people in the comments are always going like, oh, you should take master out. You guys, I cannot say this enough, have to understand, master literally recycles this entire deck almost. Because once he's normal, you can add any of these guys or any other level 1 light tuner from the grave back to your hand. And if he's in the graveyard, you can shuffle him back into the deck, target an effect monster on your field, send it to the grave, and then special summon a Blue Eyes monster from your graveyard. So he can literally recycle himself and a Blue Eyes, all like it's 2 for 1, so that's always good. So people are saying not to run him, take him out. I don't understand why, but maybe that's all of your personal choices. But for me, I always like having him. And then your last sub is the 1 Max C, because in this current meta you have to run Max C at least. That's it for the monsters. 19 out of my usual 20. Next up for the spells, you run a lot of 3-ofs, the 3 trade-ins, 3 Return of the Dragon Lord, and 3 Melody of Awakening. Oh gosh. 3 of. Now, obviously for draw power, even more draw power, it would just discard anything, add up to 2 dragons with 3,000 or more attack or 2,500 or less defense. And it doesn't just go for Blue Eyes. Any monster that can meet that criteria you can add to your hand, which is pretty good. And now, one thing I want to make perfectly clear for a lot of people out there is if you're dueling with Blue Eyes in real life and say they have something that says you can't activate anything during the damage step or so, like Utopia Lightning, banishing this from the graveyard does not activate it. You're just banishing it instantly to save a dragon. Any of your dragon or dragons that would be destroyed. It's like a 101 activating its effect to just attach one to save itself. It's not technically activating, you're just removing one of the overlay units. This, you're just moving it from the graveyard to save a dragon. It's not like breakthrough skill, you have to activate that. So I just want to make that perfectly crystal clear to anybody out there who wants to either get into a debate or rule shark about that. Then for the 2-ofs, you run 2 Pot of Desires, 2 Twin Twisters, and 2 Silver's Cry. Pot of Desires, pretty standard draw power card. Twin Twister, obviously for back row hate. And Silver's Cry, since you have like 5 targets in the deck, this card is always live. And it's always MST, Twin Twister, Cyclone bait. Anything in the floodgate meta right now is bait for that. And the 1-ofs, you run that 1 Regeki, and the Soul Charge, your win button. Next up for the traps, it's always the same traps though, so just 2 barrier and 2 strikes. Game winning just keeps you safe. That's it for the main deck, that's 40 cards. Next we're going into the side instead of the extra immediately. The side deck is up to personal preferences. I personally believe like this is a decent little side deck, but I do see myself in some ways this side deck can change. But this is what I have for now. We have the 2 Ghost Ogres, 2 Dankoseka, and the 1 Goliath. Stop gets rid of any card that activates his effect on the field. So like Dragonic Diagram, any of the Zodiacs, just any floodgate stuff that this thing can stop. It can't negate, but it gets it off the field, so you don't have to deal with it later. 2 Dankos for those Paleozoic matchups, and 1 Goliath just because he's a Vanity's Emptiness on legs, and the fact he's a trade-in target and a Gospel of Revival or Return of the Dragon Lord's target. So just summon this after you got all your plays off. Summon this, just sit there on them. And if you ever know you go up against a deck that has to utilize the extra deck very frequently, just summon him and they just sit there and go like, well. Next up for the spells, we run the Book of Moon, 2 Prohibitions, and 2 Dragon Shrine. Dragon Shrines I usually side out with the Twin Twisters or such. Book of Moon is good for monsters that I can't certainly get over at the moment. And Prohibition, I first found out about this when I was at a locals a long time ago. And it's a very powerful card and unpredicted to run into. But how it works is you activate this, call any card in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now, and your opponent can't use or summon that card while this card is face up on the field. So, like say this was face up and you call a Blue Eyes White Dragon, and you have a Blue Eyes and the alternative white in your hand, you can't summon alternative white because you're using a Blue Eyes to get its effect going. So having this just shuts down quite a few decks if you know what you're playing against and call it right at the correct time. Next up for the traps, the trap lineup can change, but this is what I find is pretty good. 2 Imperial Iron Wall, and 2 Mind Drain, and the 1 Skill Drain. Imperial Iron Wall, sometimes you don't have to banish with this deck to win, but it's just there for that. But this is basically like to stop decks that can hurt your graveyard should you be going second, and they have stuff like a Dark Law or something, or any other monster or trap that makes banishing happen that stops it. Mind Drain, just because there are a lot of hand traps in the game in this meta right now, like Ghost Ash, Ghost Reaper, Winter Cherries, Maxi, etc., etc. Just this says no to all of that. So you don't have to ever worry about being hit with that with the Ghost Ash negating your Pot of Desires or your trade-in, stuff like that, because that stuff literally hurts this deck. And Skill Drain, just because you have a lot of beat sticks in this deck. Like sometimes effects don't even have to matter when you have either Blue Eyes and Galaxy Eyes Dark Matter. Just beat over everything for pretty much a game. So for the side, and now for the extra deck, pretty standard. You run the Hope Harbinger to negate spells, redirect attacks to him, and should a monster exceeds on your field die, you can target a monster, it exceeds and it gains the attack points of that monster. The Galaxy Eyes Cypher Dragon for stealing, and the Tachyon pretty much for the Dark Matter play. And then the 1 Phantom Knight Intrablitiner. I'm sorry if I butchered that name, but this is pretty much like a Trishula Xyz monster. What it does is you can detach this material, then you can banish a card from either your opponent's hand, field, or graveyard. So it works off even more with banishing for your plays. And for the synchros, you play the Moonlight, Ancient Fairy, Starter Spark, and Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. And the new one I finally put in listening to you guys is Vermilion Dragon Mech. This guy is pretty stupid now that I used him a few times. Basically, he banishes a tuner in your graveyard and then pops a card on the field, and if this card is destroyed by a card effect, you can add one of your banished tuners back to your hand. I mean, he's not too strong. I mean, 2700, yeah, he's pretty strong, but there are a lot more things like this that can get over it. So you only really use him to either pop something and then exceed or something or so forth. But just summoning him and then popping is pretty good. And then you run the Azure Eyes, 2 Blue Eye Spirit to negate graveyard effects, stop pendulum summoning, and tag out for any of your Light Dragon synchros, be these guys. But the end phase is destroyed. And then the one last monster I brought back is the Blue Eyes Twin Burst Dragon. He's pretty much like a safe mode to go into. You just need to contact fuse 2 Blue Eyes monsters on your field, which is pretty easy in this deck. And he can't be destroyed by battle. He can attack twice per battle phase on monsters, I believe, just monsters. And if that monster isn't destroyed, you can banish it. So that's pretty much it for the Blue Eyes deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please give this video a like. And if you have any suggestions on making the deck better, like I always say, throw it in the comments below. Support is always greatly appreciated, and I always get to your comments as best as I can. And yeah, so like, comment, subscribe, and share, and I will see you all in the very next video.